Hello, hello, hello. It is me, Catalyst Echo, one more time coming to you with another video on my Bohemian inspired jewelry armoire. So what I'm doing today is I'm creating on the doors a batik fabric inspired background design. And for those of you who don't know what batik fabric is, it's a very intricately hand dyed fabric where they dye one part of it and then they use wax to create a relief design, dye another part of it, pull off the wax comes off, and then you can see the bottom layer in the design through the top layer of dye. It's a very beautiful layered approach to creating an intricate fabric, and it's all hand done. It's beautiful. The craftsmanship on batik fabric is amazing. It's also very bohemian. So I chose to do this in a slightly different way. Like whereas batik is a relief, I'm using stencils to mimic the idea and the look and feel of a batik fabric, but using stencils and furniture painting techniques. So here we see I'm working on the bottom design here, and the colors I'm using are all from Dixie Belle. It's Amethyst, Antebellum blue, and sea glass, and I'm just using it with a very, very dry brush, hardly any paint on the brush whatsoever, and I'm just blending it very, very carefully so it does not go underneath the stencil. I do want some fairly crisp lines for this stencil down here since it's going to be a focal point of the door design. Well, of the background of the door design. So we're just getting it to the point to where it's just as layered and blended as I want it to be, and there you are. We're going to do the exact same thing on the other door. Oh, and how I did this. I had this all mapped out prior to starting this video. But if you can see here, if you look right up to where the top of the stencil is, I'm using the bottom of the previous stencil that I did to determine where this stencil should go. So they're both in the exact same place. And we're basically just repeating the same design using this stencil, the same stencil. Repeating designs when you still have the same stencil is actually pretty easy because you can use the bleed over that's over on the stencil itself in order to determine where your design should be. So if you're ever going to have to repeat a design or repeat like a color choice for your furniture work, do it all at one time. It'll help you so much because you can just use the previous stencil and looking, next to you, obviously, or I'm looking next to me, obviously, to make sure I've got the right amount of blend. But yeah, you can use the stencil to determine what the other stencil should look like. And these aren't exactly the same, but they're close enough. The key frame points are close enough. And that's, again, another very batik type sentiment. There's very crisp designs, but the coloring within them are dynamic because of the fact that they're hand dyed. So yeah, so we're getting towards the end of that stencil, and I'm about to pull it so you'll see the overall effect. And how I'm doing that is with a very, very dry brush, no wetness whatsoever. Whenever there is any sort of too much paint on your brush, you need to wipe it off so there's just like the smallest hint, like a dry brush type thing, and that'll help you when you're stenciling. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is build in a background. And so the stencils that I had already created, the large ones, the green and blue stencil, that was created with Antebellum blue, Palmetto, and sea glass, just like the legs. And what I want is for that design to recede into the background and to bring the blend from the body of it into the top, but in a much less blended and polished way. So what I'm doing here is I'm bringing in Oyster to fill in some gaps of places that I know I want the white to show through. And yeah, I'm just bringing that in just to make sure that everything has the coverage I want for the white. Actually, the color is Oyster. It's not exactly white, but it's the whitest thing on the piece. And that is Oyster from the Dixie Belle silk line. So I'm just bringing that in just to make sure that, and now when I come in here with the greens and the blues, the dark colors, I didn't want to lose all of the white from everywhere. I wanted to make sure that there was a solid grasp of white throughout this because of what I'm going to do, how I'm going to create the effect. So right now what I'm doing is I'm painting with a dry brush effect, just a little bit of paint on my brush, and then I'm just pulling it through. And this is just to get the baseline, the darkest points. The top I have already painted, I'm painting dark as well, because I'm going to be pulling paint from the top and pulling it through. And you can see I'm not really concerned about like, more what I'm concerned about is the placement of the lights and darks rather than how perfect they are. This technique that I'm using, it doesn't need to be perfect. It's meant to look as though these colors were blended almost tie-dye-ish. That the batik kind of dye and fabric is a lot more complex than tie-dye, but it's a similar kind of colors flow into one another in the way that they want to vibe. So what you can see I'm doing here is I'm using my mister to really wet this down and then let the colors flow. This technique scares a lot of people because there's no control. And as you can see, it's coming down into my design. That's okay. That's okay. That's part of what I want. So now I'm going to come in here and refine this. I wish I had not been quite so in front of the camera for this part. Hopefully you can see it when I do this side. I'm a lot more in front of the camera than I wanted to be in this video, but obviously I can't reshoot it because it's done. So hopefully you can see how I'm doing that. What I'm doing is I'm using a super, super wet brush to kind of blend the colors in, but I'm not blending them completely. I am just trying to pull them in and smooth them out a little bit. I want that, that dimension of the wetness. So this is a combination of a wet and a dry technique in order to create this kind of tie-dye batik effect. Okay, and then I'm just coming in here and building in a little bit more of the darks. This technique requires, at least for the way I'm doing it, it required a lot of layers. And so this portion of the video is a little bit larger than I really intended it to be. But that will give me more time to say and to lose my place, lose my train of thought. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm about to just like build in some more dimension, some more, because it got a little bit muddy. And so what I wanted to do was just build in some dimension. And so I'm building in some dimension. I have a little bit of Palmetto and a little bit of Antebellum blue on my brush. And I'm just building in a little bit of dimension with dry brushing. Okay. And then I believe we're going to start switching to the bottom here to bring the design through. I'm going to start, yeah, here we go. Okay, so yeah, I'm going to start bringing the design through using my dry brush technique very, very quickly in order to just, you see how I'm actually accentuating those drips? I want that. I want those drips to be there. That's part of the background look. So now I'm bringing in a little bit more dimension by adding some more of the sea glass above here. And ultimately what I decided to do was with this was in order to create that layered dimensional batik fabric effect, after I was done with this, I took it downstairs and did a really, really, really like quick once over with my orbital sander with 400 grit, and then I pulled away some of what I had done. And this is because I want to make room for some of the white stencil details that I do later. So now I've come back upstairs and that's dry, and I have put my stencil that I used to create the big stencil design, I've put that right over the top the exact way I did it before, so that I can bring in some of this purple and blue detailing into here. And you can see I used pixie spray to keep the stencil down, but this stencil, which is by Waverly, is very, very detailed. And while I don't mind a little bit of bleed through simply because of the look I'm trying to create, it was moving, and so I added some tape in addition to the pixie spray. Some stencils are fine with just pixie spray. Some stencils, like this one, would be better. If I just wanted to use pixie spray, it would be better if I wasn't having it on my painter's easel. So I'm bringing both the Amethyst and the Palmetto, or not the Palmetto, I'm sorry, the Antebellum blue into this design. And I'm basically just fading those colors into what's already there. So I'm using very little amounts of paint just to get the idea of what's going on. And then, oh, look, my cat just, I actually did not notice that at all until right then. That's one of my cats. I don't know which one. They both look the same to me unless I'm really up close with them. So I don't know which one, but there was one of my cats right there. All right, and so we're just going to continue building this the blend of the color of the stencil. Oh yeah, I guess he's just going to hang out there. They like to participate. That actually looks like Wyoming. Yeah, I think that that's Wyoming. So that's Wyoming. So if you are following me on Instagram, you may have noticed my little section called Your Daily Cute. Well, there's Your Daily Cute for this video. So now I'm repositioning this in exactly the right space, and I am doing the same thing. I'm just repeating. And the purpose of this is to create the dimensional effect that I was going for. I had both in my mind. I had like tie-dye batik and faded denim in my mind when I was trying to create this look, which I know was a lot, but I do like how it came out. So this is the first layer of the background of the doors. After I finished this aspect of it, the video is going to stop here because I did not film myself doing the small white details, mainly because I started them and I wanted to see if it was going to work, if it was going to do what I wanted it to do. And then it did work, and it just went so fast and I forgot to video it. So after this layer, the next layer that I'm going to do is take these tiny little stencils that have a related kind of mandala type design, but like floral mandala though. That was my idea, was they have to look like flowers because flowers are part of the theme. So it's floral without being floral. All right, and so that's the end of that. And so, yeah, now you can see the white details. That I added in later, and I apologize for not getting a video of it, but basically it's the same thing, only I used Oyster by Dixie Belle Silk. So thanks for watching, and be sure to subscribe to my channel and watch more of my videos for little quick tips and artistic finishes. Bye!